BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and I decided to do a video for you guys where I talk about rereads again, but this time instead of discussing the values of rereading and why I want to get into rereading books more. I'm actually just going to show you the books I would like to reread, and I'm going to show you the ones that I want, and these are ones that I hope to get to this year, but some of them are really long books, so I don't know if that will happen. Let's actually start with the one I've already started my reread of, and that is The Assassin's Apprentice, and that this includes the whole trilogy, because it is a trilogy. It's the first series in the Farseer trilogy. It's the first trilogy in the realm of the Elderling series. In this particular trilogy is called the Farseer trilogy. Although people do say you can either read this trilogy first, or you can read the Live Ship Traders trilogy first. And part of what reminded me that I want to reread this is actually because I did start last summer reading the Live Ship Traders series, because a lot of people consider that the series you read second, if you choose to read this one first. And this is one that I read a long time ago, back in probably 2017, where it was really popular. So many fantasy readers were reading this trilogy. And part of me, the reason why I wanted to reread it myself is not just because I started the Live Ship Traders series already, or trilogy, but because at the time I was reading it because everyone in fantasy was reading it, everyone talked about it, so I naturally was drawn to it. Not just because, and I don't mean like when people read popular books and you think, oh, you're only reading that book because it's popular, but just because, I mean, I guess that is a little bit there, but also I was genuinely interested in this story, and you hear about something enough. I mean, it isn't just because popular, I'm gonna read it. No, it's also not just because something's popular, but a lot of people will read popular books because they hear about it so much. So, and if it's the type of genre or story that they are already like, then they're gonna want to read it. So, to me at least, it's not always about like, oh, it's popular, so I have to read it. I think sometimes it is because you just happen to hear about it. Happens that it is popular, so you are gonna hear about it constantly, and there might be times when there are people who have more superficial ideas and will read it just because it's popular, but I think oftentimes it's more about the fact that they hear about it so much and they already kind of like that kind of story or that genre or whatever. So because it gets into their head, the story, so they're like, oh, well, maybe I should go ahead and read it. Like, they don't find it of their own free will. They're exposed to it. And a lot of times they're gonna like, because to me at least, I feel like if it's not your thing, then you're not gonna read it just because it's popular. Now, and maybe that's being naive of me, but I like to believe most people, if it's not their thing normally, they're not gonna just read it because it's popular. But I'm probably being naive and stupid, but anyway. And I did enjoy it, and I'm sure I'm gonna love it the second time around. I mean, I'm already liking it. And so I don't think my opinion is going to change that much, but it's just nice to be able to read the story without any outside influences, reading it on my own and experiencing the story without feeling like, even though it's not like I'm reading with groups of people or anything, it's just I'm on BookTube, so it feels like I'm reading it with other people. And in this case, I was reading with other people because it was so popular, but now I'm kind of reading it without the popularity factor. And obviously I've already started it, so fortunately that's also one where the chapters are kind of long, so okay, next. And no, this next one is one that I've already reread multiple times, and so this probably won't be if I get to it this year, it will be my fourth time rereading this, but that is Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I remember I read this when I was the first time I read it, I was 16, and I ended up seeing the 2011 movie adaptation after I read this, and I remember loving it, and I've been, I have, like I said, I reread it twice, and I want to reread it again because, to reread it, um, it's just so good. I read it as a teenager, and and I like to think, and as I said in that video about rereading, I do think you can get more from something, even if you have already reread it. There's always something new to discover or new things to think about, and even then, even if there's nothing new, I have, I don't do this. It's not like I do this in front of people, but I do, like, even if I've seen something or read something a bunch of times, I will think about it and talk about it to myself. And I just kind of like rediscussing things, rehashing things I've already thought about, because it's just so interesting to me and so fascinating. And this is one of those books. Like, so I really like the characters, and and like I said, I've already read it, but I want to reread it again. I want this to become a, one that is one that I've always wanted this to be a story that I reread every year. I have not made that happen yet, but I would like to do that. So that is Jane Eyre, and then I'm gonna go ahead and show you the other Bronte novel. And that is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. This was recently adapted, so it has been on a lot of people's radar lately. And actually, there are some people who enjoy the adaptations and some people that are not happy with the adaptation. And I haven't seen it yet. But I want to reread the book first. And I'm also thinking about annotating it. And I meant to back when the movie came out, but I never got around to it. And I have been meaning to reread this one. But so, and especially, I even bought this copy of it because I had a different copy before, and then I ended up deciding to let that one go, and at the time, and now I want, and then I bought this one because I had been wanting to reread it. So, oh, actually, no, wait. What happened is I got it from the library originally. That's right. Because when I first started doing Victober, this was one of the books I bought. I borrowed from the library, so I ended up buying my own copy, because I had been meaning to reread it. So I would like to do this one this year too. Like the Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, I could potentially read them this year. Okay, and then we have our very own Elliot Brooks of BookTube. This is her book, The Peace and Turmoil, the first book in the Dark Shore series, and she finally was able to get to writing book 2, and I'm kind of waiting for it to come out in a paperback like this one. And she did say it's coming, so I'm just waiting for it to happen. It hasn't happened yet, so I figured let me reread it, because I have been meaning to reread it, because it has been so long since I read the first time. I might have read it back in 2017, like Wuthering Heights. It was that, and I remember really enjoying it. But again, I want to continue to try to pursue annotating books and analyze them. Like, it's so, like, for me, it's so much easier to analyze a movie and to talk about a movie and to remember things from a movie, because you have the visuals, you have actors saying the lines, you have the songs. With the book, it's you in the book, and if it's a long one, and for me, if I don't reread it right away the second time, then I might not remember, or if I don't hear other people talking about it constantly. As much as I read, it's just easier for me to remember TV shows and movies sometimes, because it's easier for me to, honestly, and this might sound lazy, but honestly, it is easier for me to, because I can watch a movie or TV show a lot faster than I can read a book. Which is funny, because even yesterday, my mom said she feels like I'm one of those faster readers, and I'm really not. I'm not super slow or anything, but I'm not like a speed reader or anything. But it still will take me a long time to reread a book, especially one this long. But I've been meaning to reread it and to reread it for the release of her book 2. So there's that one. And that one I like to reread this year at some point. Like maybe read it, maybe during my birthday month or something. Okay, and then we have a classic, a French classic, which has also one of those classics that has the popularity, a resurgence of popularity, and that is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I remember loving this book. It took me a long time. This I bought back before we moved where we live now, so this is one of the ones from my old house that I still had. Not this copy, a different copy, but and I remember absolutely loving I think it was 2011, was it 2011 when that movie came out? The movie adaptation with Jim Caviezel. But I remember absolutely loving it. And what really helped me finally to actually, quote unquote, read the book was listening to the audiobook. So not physically reading the book, but listening to an audiobook really helped me get through the book because it's a long book. And because after that, now I want to physically read the book and read the words myself so I can, because people will say, oh, it doesn't count because you listened to it. You used a different muscle, so you didn't really read it. And, sorry, I'm still bitter about that. I still find that annoying whenever, but, I want to reread this because I loved it. And then, like I said, a new adaptation, just like with The Wuthering Heights, is coming out, starring Sam Coughlin as Edmond Dantes, is coming out. And I actually did do a video a few years ago, after I finished listening to it, an audiobook. I did a video where I talked about how this would be, maybe if they ever adapted it again, because, classics can often be adapted multiple times, that they can make it to a TV series, which would have 10 episodes per season, because this is like 1,000-page book, so it is possible it could be. And that's what I mean by series. I don't mean something short like a movie, but something that will have multiple episodes to expand on this. But it's probably a mini series that this adaptation, just like other versions they have done. And I remember it was one of you guys who let me know that this was coming out, that they were doing this new adaptation. So thank you for letting me know at the time. And I'm looking forward to this current one. I'm looking forward to this when I can get access to it. I'll have to check online and see when it's coming out. But anyway, I remember absolutely loving this. So, and I want to reread it. Obviously, one of the ones that I have started my reread of it, but I haven't picked it up because it's a long book. And what I seem to run into with the longer books is that because they take more time and I have so many new books that I need to read, so I'm like constantly battling with myself of, I want to reread it, but I have all these new books that I haven't read. And so I'm trying to change that and reread more. So that's this one. I don't know if I'll get to it this year or not, but maybe again another May, for my birthday month, because it was one of my favorites. Okay, then we have. So this is another one of those situations. This is one of those situations where this was the first book I read by the author years ago, and I've been wanting to reread it. But there was another book by the author that's a bit longer that I did start. That's a very popular book. And I ended up restarting it because I took such a long break, like putting the book down and not coming back to the book. So again, I'm constantly arguing with myself. Do I do this reread, or before I finish that book, but I had already started, or do I need to read that one first and finish that book, even if it's going to take me a little bit of time? Because I do want to reread that book. I do want to read that book too, but it's a big commitment, and and I end up feeling guilty if I decide to do the reread first, but then maybe the reread will help get me motivated to pick up that book and get back to it. And when I say motivated, I don't mean that I'm not interested in the other book and I'm forcing myself. I am interested in the author's other book. I really want to read it, but there's times when I get sidetracked by other books. And, so I'm constantly arguing with myself about it. And other people tell me, oh, well, you should finish that other book first before you do a reread. And part of me does agree with them, but part of me is like, but I want to reread the other one first. I kind of want to reread the other one. And yeah, there's no rules or anything, no laws or any. And when it comes to reading, do what you want. But I still, I still feel guilty and still argue with myself. But the book that I want to reread is Crime and Punishment, and the book that I started that I'm trying to decide, do I read that one first before I do a reread, is The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. I remember loving this, and this was one of my first books that was a little more challenging and a little darker of a story. And I was so proud that I read this because it was so different than what I'm used to. It's such a denser story than, like, say, a Jane Austen novel or even a Dickens novel. And yes, his novels are super long, but they're a little lighter and fluffy. I mean, they're not fluffy and they're not, like, they still have their darker stuff, but they're a little bit easier to read, I think, than Dostoevsky's works. But I remember loving this when I read it, and I was so proud of myself, and I've been meaning to reread it because I think it's such a fascinating story, and you're delving into the psychology of the main character. So, but I just haven't yet, and I'm again constantly trying to decide: do I get back to Brothers Karamazov, which I've in fact restarted, or do I do my reread and then maybe come back to that one? But then I'll end up feeling guilty. But then it's like, maybe reading this one will motivate me to read The Brothers Karamazov. So that's my challenge for myself. That's this one. And then we have, so this one, I was reminded that I had been meaning to reread this one because this podcast that I started listening to, I think they just call themselves the Book Club. It is I guess in a way, it's a spin-off of The Rest is History, because one of the hosts of the Rest of History podcast runs this book club with the woman who produces The Rest is History. And they decided to do a book club where they discuss books. And one of their books they discussed was The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And I have been meaning to reread this. And I was again in a situation where I have already started a reread of this. And them discussing it reminded me that I went to reread, and reminded me how much I love this book. And it's funny, her other two books, I didn't get into. I started to reread them, but I kind of got sidetracked. And I'm willing to give them another chance after I reread this one. Although a lot of people say, The Goldfinch is a very tragic and sad story. Like, the main character has a very miserable existence to a lot of people, but I'm still up for trying them again. But I loved this book the first time, and I've been wanting to reread it. In fact, when my sister was talking about getting back into rereading, she did look at this book briefly, and I did tell her what it was about. Problem, of course, is they were only staying a week, and my sister is not a fast reader, and, she has 3 kids, so she's easily distracted. I mean, I hope she has continued to try to get back into reading. I'm just trying to not pressure her, because I think I ruined it by getting so excited and wanting to do a book club with her and all that, and she was like, you need to calm down, because this is no guarantee, and I have a lot of stuff. I'm busy with 3 little kids, so no, she's not just being lazy. She has 3 kids, little kids. Although one's a preteen now, or will be a preteen. But, and, I think that personally, I think it's not fair to be like, oh, you're just not making time. If you wanted to read, you would. I mean, I think in some cases that is true, but I think sometimes when you have kids, more than just, it's going to be stressful, and, your job and everything, and, but anyway, getting off topic, so, this one I want to reread, as well. And the other thing is, I'm thinking, oh, these would be perfect for this month, but then I'm like, I kind of want to reread them now, but I can't reread all these books at the same time. I'm not that skilled. And then we have... this one was inspired at the end of last autumn, when I watched the TV show, that the adaptation of this book, and I've been wanting to reread it since then, and I already planned to reread it at some point. But that watching the TV show really got me motivated to consider it, to put it on my list of books I want to reread at some point. And ideally, I'd love to reread it this year, but I don't know if that will happen, because it is one of the chunkier ones. I mean, most of these are chunky books. And that is Nosferatu 2 by Joe Hill. This was my first Joe Hill book. Since then, I've read Horns, and I finally did a reread via listening to an audiobook of Heart-Shaped Box. And I like to reread some of Joe Hill's other books. And no, I'm not going to get into the graphic novel stuff, because I tried to get into graphic novels in the past, and I know people say, well, you just weren't reading the right one. But no, my problem is not the story. My problem is I just have this weird thing about not liking the whole idea of having to go back, look at the picture, make sure I'm looking at the pictures, and start looking at the pictures and reading the little bits of words, the little captions and all that. I don't like that. I either want to just have the words or just have the visuals of a movie or a show. I just don't like feeling like, oh, I better go back and look at the pictures, because that's part of it. The art is part of a graphic novel. So I'm probably never gonna get around to reading the graphic novels, although I am somewhat curious about the backstory, if the TV show was accurate to the backstory Joe Hill established, because he does have a graphic novel called Wraith, I think it's called, that I'm guessing is the backstory of our antagonist and his car. That's the only, just to know if that was accurate or not. So no, there's not an invitation to tell me, oh, you just didn't read the right comics, or, oh, you only read 2 comics. That doesn't prove anything. It's like, no, I already know that I don't like the format of having to remind myself to look at pictures and read little words and read the words. I don't like that. I've read, books with pictures like when I was a kid and everything, like everybody else, everyone, but as an adult, I prefer either one or the other. Okay, but anyway, this was back when I was trying to read more different types of horror other than Stephen King, although this is Stephen King adjacent, because Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. And I still want to continue to try to get into other books. Like, I do want to read another Moran Malfi someday, but I haven't done it yet. But this, I remember I wanted to reread this after I watched the series, but I never picked it up. So, this is on my list too of rereads. Okay, while I'm on the roll with the horror, this is another horror book that I've been meaning to reread. This is another classic, Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. And I remember, again, another one I enjoy. All these I liked. So, there's a reason I want to reread these. It's because I liked them. There are times when I will reread a book because I read it a long time ago and I don't know how I feel about it now. Like, I reread Catcher in the Rye, and because I didn't know if my feelings would change on that book. But Shirley Jackson, Haunting of Hill House, it's a ghost story, a haunted house. It's also a psychological thriller, because it's like, are there real ghosts? Is the house haunted? Or is it all in their head? The main character's head. And I love those kinds of stories, and I'm still trying to get more into horror and read other authors other than, I already love horror. Get into horror via this format, the format of a book. And so I'm continuing to increase my horror library reading. Like, I have The House of Leaves. Oh, Leaves of Grass is the poetry. I always have to think about which one's the poetry, because I know they both have leaves in the title, but Leaves of Grass is the poetry book, the famous poetry book, and House of Leaves is the horror story. So I want to read that one too, and I haven't yet, because it's intimidating, because it's long. But I want to reread this horror book as well. I meant to last year, but I never got around to it. That's the other story of all these books, is that I mean to reread them and I don't. So I keep saying I'm going to reread them. But yeah, I remember loving this and I want to reread it again. And also this other one, which is not a pretty edition of, not a pretty version of the book. It's very old, probably a stains. These are probably stains or whatever. But this is my copy of My Cousin Rachel. And this is one I've been wanting to reread as well. I still kind of like Rebecca better than this one, which I think I also grabbed Rebecca as a reread. But this is a definite. I definitely want to reread this one. Because I've already reread Rebecca more than once, so I want to reread this one. And this is this, and again, I still liked it. I just preferred Rebecca over this one. And then I would like to see try to find the adaptation at some point. And this is actually, there was an adaptation with Rachel Weisz and, again, Sam Coughlin, who was, as I said earlier, doing the adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo too. And which I'm wondering, is the dude must be a reader, because he's done a lot of book adaptation. I mean, even Hunger Games, he did the Hunger Games too, so he must be a reader. I mean, although I know sometimes the actors don't necessarily read the books that they're doing they're performing an adaptation of, because they don't want it to influence their performance, and fine, but I also think it wouldn't hurt to read the book if it's not super long, because like Game of Thrones is really long, and so I'm not surprised that a lot of people did not read those books. But or Song of Ice and Fire, I should say. So yeah, this is definitely, I want to reread this first before I do a reread of Rebecca, because I've already reread Rebecca. So that's My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. And then we have Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury. I reread it last year, and I want to reread it again. I think I read it last year, unless I'm just getting mixed up by the fact that I finally saw the movie adaptation. Because that was one that this book first came on my radar when it wasn't even the book, it was the adaptation that I saw, and that's when the story came onto my radar. Because I went to a sleepover when I think we were in middle school or early high school, and this was the movie we watched, and we were loving it, and I've been meaning to rewatch it. And I finally I came across the book, and I had been wanting to, and I've been also meaning to read some of his other, Ray Bradbury's other autumnal reads, as people like to think of them as, like Dandelion Wine, and then there's the Halloween Tree, which I actually got, which instead of getting a copy for myself, I got a copy for my nephews, but now I kind of wish I got myself a copy too. And I've been meaning to do it, I just haven't got around to it. But I'm loving this book. Again, I love this book. And again, this is definitely an autumnal read, because it's it's actually during October, and is about a carnival, and this guy, and I've always loved that kind of story. So, and I would like to see if there's any more stories like this book out there somewhere. But anyway, so there's that. That's my, and then let me go ahead and show you Rebecca is the other Daphne du Maurier book I want to reread. I've already reread it, and yes, this is based on the most recent adaptation with Lily, I think it's Lily James, and I always forget the guy's name. Armie Hammer. He was one of those actors that got a little bit of a, there's rumors about him not being a great guy. But he did say that they were not true. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm done, and I'm kind of, it's exhausting, when you get attached to an actor and then it turns out that, oh, they're not actually a great person. But like I said, I only bring it up because, of course, this is the movie tie-in edition. I keep thinking about it because I have seen another edition of the book, at the bookstore recently, but it might be gone already. It probably is. But I have thought about buying it and trading out this. But whenever that happens, I always feel guilty. But this is another one that I want to reread. But like I said, I first want to reread My Cousin Rachel before I do another. The good news, I've already read this, so it's not like a situation with the two Dostoevsky where one I haven't read. Okay, and then we have Bleak House, and like the Dostoevskys, it's another situation where I've read, there's another book by this author that I need to read first, or I feel like I should read it first, but then part of me wants to do a reread of Bleak House. The other book that I haven't read is Our Mutual Friend, but in his case, there are also a lot of books I haven't read. Well, I guess in a way, the same with Dostoevsky. There are still a few books by him that I haven't read. But I keep wanting to reread this book. And I did start reading the cloth-bound edition of it, but then I felt like I need to buy a paperback that I can just travel with. And finally, I asked my mom what she thought if I should keep them, and she was like, well, they are nice copies, maybe you should keep them. And like, because I seriously considered donating them. Because it's like they're heavy books, and it's harder to travel with them, so I almost feel like I have to like limit myself to how many books I bring if I bring those ones, and they're not always comfortable to read, so, but I don't have the shelf space, so it's kind of trying to decide, okay, do I, but my mom did say she thinks maybe I should consider keeping them, but yeah, do I reread it, and then come back to Our Mutual Friend, but I did start Our Mutual Friend, and the fact that these are long books and so much is happening, sometimes I feel like taking these long breaks hinders my remembering things and getting, and because these books are so long, so a lot of stuff does happen in these books. I mean, it doesn't seem like it, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff you need to know or to remember. So that's my predicament. So just like Dostoevsky, I have the predicament of before I do another reread, finish the other book by the author, or should I not let myself feel bad and just go ahead and do my reread, because it might motivate me to read the other book. Now, it's a little bit easier with Dickens, because once I get into Dickens, once I start reading the book and get into them, then it just is, I can't think of the phrase I want to say, but I'm gone. I'm in it. But anyway, and I love that I found this one. I was so excited when I found this, because a paperback, because I consciously was looking. It's the same with Mom Watch. I'm looking at the used bookstore. So there's that one. It's a reread, and then we have. And I had already mentioned this on my channel, and I believe someone did comment about it, me doing my reread of this. I think it's on my channel, or it's either that or on someone else's channel. I was commenting on their video and saying I want to reread, and a person was responding to my comment. I don't remember. But this is one I've been meaning to reread as well, and again, I've already started it. The Shining by Stephen King, and I remember loving this, and I do want to also reread Dr. Sleep, its sequel, as well, which I did watch the adaptation at some point last year. I did watch it again because it was available on HBO Max. And it's also funny thinking about, because Ewan McGregor plays Danny as an adult in the sequel in Dr. Sleep the movie, and thinking about him being the son of Jack Nicholson, because that's the one I'm most familiar with. I deliberately asked for the one that Stephen King made, because I've already seen the other one, and I'm so familiar with it. So I wanted to see the other version that Stephen King created. And which I feel about Stephen King, you have the Stephen King adaptations that come out there. I feel the same way with those that a lot of people feel about. Jane Austen adaptations, the BBC ones, which I also want those as well. And I'm slowly collecting the adaptations based on her books too. But how I feel about those, because they're kind of similar, where there's a datedness to them, but they're still, you still love them. You're still a sucker for them. But anyway. But I remember really enjoying this, and I was kind of motivated. And one of the other reasons is Emmy. I still don't know what her channel is called. I'm just assuming it's called Emmy. But she did a reading of this one. She's starting to get into Stephen King, and there was someone else that was getting into Stephen King recently that just started, that they were asking well, actually it was her. I think she was the one that asked us to give what books we recommend she read. But also, I don't know if it was Kristen or Mads was also one of them started getting to Stephen King, although they were not happy with Under the Dome. There were aspects of Under the Dome they were not comfortable with reading. That's the thing about Stephen King, is there's gonna be stuff in his books that you probably won't be comfortable with, and you're wondering, why, Stephen? Why did you put that in there? I mean, like, it has the infamous scene with the kids when they're preteens, or they're not even preteens, they're just, they're like, that they do something that's like, really? Why did you really have to go there? And sometimes for some people, some of that kind of stuff that's a done deal for them. That's the one that is like, no, I don't know if I'm gonna keep going with Stephen King. And I hope that's not the case with, like I said, I don't know if it was Kristen or Mads is reading him, but so far nothing has been totally like, I'm like, why did you put that in there? Really? Did you have to go there? But then I'm like, okay, I still like your stories though, even though there are things about them that I don't like, that I don't appreciate. I think it's a little weird, but anyway. So I've been, again, another one that I've started, but it's a long book. That's the song I sing with a lot of these, where it's like the excuses that they are long and will take a long time to read. So these last two are actually books that I read last year, so it's not that long ago that I read them. But I'm trying to change and not take years before I do a reread. So like I said, I'm in my mid-30s. Like, almost at the end, in a few years, I'll be in my 40s. And, and you never know, even though I'm not old, there's still the fear of, like, what if something happens that I can't control, or something like an accident of some kind, where I do some, because I'm not being careful. So I always have that in the back of my mind. I try not to think about it, because I'm not old. 30 is young, still young. So I try not to think about that. But every so often, I admit that the thought crosses my mind. And like I said, a lot of the books I want to reread are long books. And they're going to I'm not a speed reader. So that's another reason why I'm trying to change it and do more rereads. But I'm also trying to read my new books I haven't read. So these are more recent reads. First we have Baron and Luthien by Tolkien. This is his epic romance story before Arwen and Aragorn. And these names are even on the tombstones of him and his wife. And this is a love story. And last year I read The Silmarillion. I think it was last year, or it was earlier this year. I'll have to double check. But so after that, it kind of explains some stuff that I missed during my first reading of this, because I still struggle with epic poetry, and that's why it's taken me so long to pick up the Divine Comedy again and Paradise Lost. But I want to reread. Now that I've read The Silmarillion went over the story, I want to reread this, and I thought this year would be perfect. And it's actually this month that I thought would be a good month, because this is the same time I read it last year. But I haven't yet, and I want to. So I mean, if anything, if I'm gonna do it this month, I probably need to do it sooner rather than later. But yeah, I've been meaning to reread this one in a while. And then last but not least and this was really recent, as in I read it at the end of last year as well, and that is The Plantagenets. by Dan Jones, The Warrior Kings and Queens Who Made England. Because there are other authors who write about the Plantagenets, and they all kind of take the easy route of this type of just calling out the Plantagenets. And he ended the subtitle The Warrior Kings and Queens Who Made England, so people wouldn't get it mixed up. And I've been wanting to reread this history. I remember really liking it and learning about these kings and queens, and I want to annotate it, try to get more into annotation. It's really hard. I really struggle with that because there are times when I just want to read the book. And I'm like, okay, what's important? What would be too much? Like, but then I'm like, what do I want to focus on? I don't always have a focus. I just want to just annotate. But, yeah, this is one of those books that I want to reread also to annotate it. So, that is The Plantagenets, the Warrior Kings and Queens Who Made England by Dan Jones. I love that topic. I'm really enjoying that topic, by the way. So those are all my rereads. Would love to know, now I would love to know love to know what are books that you would like to reread, and whether they're books that you would like to try to reread this year, or you think you're not going to reread it this year, but you might want to reread it in the future. I would love to know what those are. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will talk to y'all later. All right, bye!